Welcome everyone to the first presentation on Paperwork's new webinar series for our customers. Today's topic, Introduction to Sustainable Packaging Trends and Drivers, is intended to introduce some of the shifts we're seeing which suggest the increasing importance of designing packaging with sustainability in mind. My name is Kyla Fisher and I am the Sustainability Director for Paperwork's Packaging. I offer sustainability services to both our staff and clients in both our packaging and paperboard divisions. Before we get started, a quick introduction to Paperwork's industries. We were founded in 2008 as part of a strategic acquisition by a large private equity firm. In 4 years, we've grown from an initial 2 recycled paperboard mills to 19 locations across North America. We offer a full range of integrated packaging services, ranging from the provision of recycled paperboard, sheeting, converting, design, and printing services. Our packaging division is considered in the top 10 of packaging suppliers in North America, while our paperboard division is currently the largest supplier to the trade for recycled board. With locations in Canada, Mexico, and across the United States, we can offer extensive packaging services to cover the North American market. Now, let's get into today's topic. My key objective today is to paint the big picture for sustainable packaging and why it's quickly becoming an imperative for success in our industry today. In doing so, we will cover how to define and identify sustainable packaging, introduce some of the trends and drivers pushing the demand for sustainable packaging, and introduce some tools and resources to help you promote and assess sustainable packaging options. To begin with, let's define sustainability. Sustainability is one of those terms that has various meanings depending on who is defining it. For our purposes, Paperwork sees sustainability as a three-legged stool, with each leg representing a different but equally important aspect of the whole. The 3 legs are people, planet, profits. This is commonly referred to as the triple bottom line, or the 3 Ps. When we're looking at people in regards to sustainability, we're asking how can we create a great environment for our employees and community. It means looking at the impacts of our operations and seeking to be an employer of choice and responsible corporate citizen in our community. Planet means we're asking how do we ensure our operations don't harm the environment. Are we looking at how we design our products? Can we remove chemicals from our supply chain? Are we recycling everything we can? And are we complying and ideally exceeding regulations? And finally, profits. It's altruistic to focus on the other 2, without understanding we need to ensure we're profitable in the end run. Ultimately, if we aren't generating revenues, we won't stay in business and can't promote the other 2. So in this way, the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit, become like the legs on the stool. If they're not all equally balanced, the stool is unstable and can possibly break. If I can emphasize one thing, I would say one of the most common preconceptions of sustainability is that it's a focus on the environment. And while that's partially accurate, it's not the whole. If you think of a stool, you know it's a lot more comprehensive than just that one leg. Alternatively, you may find some companies using a similar definition of sustainability, but also referencing it as corporate social responsibility, corporate responsibility, or even corporate citizenship. Understanding what sustainability means, let's move into defining sustainable packaging. This definition you see on your screen has been created by the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, otherwise known as SPC. It is currently the most widely accepted global definition of sustainable packaging. As you can see, we have 7 different parameters to review when looking for sustainable packaging. And similar to what we saw with the previous slide, taken as a whole, these parameters cover people, planet, and profit. For example, let's look at the first parameter, social responsibility. It asks, is your packaging beneficial, safe, and healthy for individuals and community? In other words, are we looking at how we source and use our materials and what impact that has? In this example, something like forestry certification, which addresses fair wages and deforestation issues, addresses the beneficial elements of social responsibility. We're evaluating for chemicals of risk in coatings and inks, would address the safe and healthy elements. Without getting too much into the specifics of each element, what I want to emphasize here is that this definition moves us away from value statements towards a more comprehensive quantitative definition. It's no longer enough to say our packaging is sustainable because it's made from recycled board. Instead, we need to start moving towards evaluating packaging along all 7 of these parameters and being able to address each one to offer substantive proof that what we're looking at in terms of sustainability. With this as a more encompassing definition of sustainability, it's important to note that this definition is actually based on a common sustainability assessment model, the life cycle value assessment. For those who are not familiar with the life cycle value assessment model, I find this slide helps introduce the concept. Essentially, life cycle assessment is a summation of the environmental impacts of a product from conception to end of life. So take, for example, a plastic water bottle. In a life cycle assessment, we would look at and calculate the environmental impacts of drilling for the petroleum to produce the bottle. Add to that the impacts of taking that petroleum, shipping it to the manufacturing floor, adding chemicals and additives to turn the petroleum into plastic, and then the manufacturing process to fabricate the bottle into the shape we want. Then add the environmental impact of shipping those bottles to the water facility, filling them, shipping them to the store where I choose to buy that bottle, I drink it, and now I have 2 choices. I can send it to the landfill, or I can send it for recycling. A life cycle value assessment would add up the impacts along each of the stages to provide an assessment of where the greatest impacts are and what the best options are for reducing environmental impact. In a similar way, that's how the previous definition we saw for sustainable packaging works. By addressing each of the 7 elements, we can see where we're strong and where we can focus to increase sustainability value, and who we may need to work with to achieve greater success. Another slide from the Sustainable Packaging Coalition provides us with a direct way to think about how to define sustainable packaging. In this case, simply consider each phase of your product's packaging. Moving through the circle, you can ask how the package impacts each process and what considerations along the process that we understand how to define sustainable packaging, let's look at why it's becoming an imperative for our industry. To start with, when you speak to most consumers, packaging equates waste to them. Yes, ultimately we know it serves a beneficial purpose by extending shelf life and providing protection during transport, but for the most part, once the consumer takes a product home, the package becomes waste. So on that note, we know that 1/3 of all household trash is packaging. This equates to roughly 800 pounds per average North American. And while it's not as imperative here in the U.S. as in the EU, they are running out of landfill space and looking for ways to reduce and better manage waste. So with those pressures mounting, what we see is a financial opportunity for focusing on sustainable packaging. In 2009, packaging that met the Sustainable Packaging Coalition's criteria for sustainable design represented about $88 million within our industry. This is expected to grow so that over 45% of all packaging on retail shelves by the year 2015 will meet the SPC criteria, and this niche industry will grow to an estimated $214 billion. While we can see there's an obvious economic incentive to jump into sustainable packaging, let's look further into some of the other trends and drivers. Specifically, I want to address shifts in consumer behavior over the past few decades, the introduction of extended producer responsibility in North America, packaging protocols, scorecards, and paper calculators, supply chain audits, and the rise of international standards. What's being referred to as the biggest shift in consumer marketing in the last 50 years is the rise of the low-HOS consumer. Low-HOS stands for lifestyle of the healthy and sustainable. A typical low-HOS is a consumer who sees their purchasing power as a political act. Generally speaking, they are under 40, well-educated, and have a decent family income, although there's always exceptions to the rule. More importantly, a low-HOS can be defined by their decision to either reward or punish a company by the decision to purchase a product, and they don't hesitate to wield this influence. A low-HOS wants to ensure that the products they consume are healthy and safe for themselves and for the environment. They don't object to paying more for these products as long as at the end of the day they feel they're making a better choice. In making purchasing decisions, they're looking at things like chemical use, fair wages, and environmental impact. If they like your product, they won't hesitate to promote it, and will in fact become one of your best advocates. If they feel you're not representing their values or misrepresenting your claims, they will be the first to boycott, protest, and lobby against your products. For example, with the recent oil spill in the Gulf, it would have been the Lohas's who first mobilized to boycott BP, and through their influence, they would have garnered the support of other consumers we see on this chart. Now moving down to the right, Naturalites are a lighter version of the Lohas. They're more concerned with the personal health and will pay more for these products and advocate for health and safety of consumer goods. Naturalites are generally more interested in their own longevity and health and would be the consumers that you see in yoga attire on a Saturday morning at Whole Foods. The environment's not as important to them. They generally meditate, practice yoga, eat organic, and avoid pesticides. Between the Lohas and Naturalites, representing 34% of the population, we begin to understand now why organic food is one of the fastest growing agricultural industries today. Next in the circle comes the drifters. These are well-intentioned consumers, but they can be swayed either way. Price has some influence on what they will or will not buy, but if a product comes with a strong recommendation, they can easily be persuaded to purchase the more sustainable choice. They want to be seen as socially and environmentally responsible, but this is not truly their top value. They're also less likely to engage in a political/consumption campaign to make changes in consumer products. Now conventionals, they want to see an economic imperative behind making sustainable and healthy choices, and they will not rock the boat for lobbying for changes. For example, they would be interested in Energy Star products, but only because they quantify the amount of energy savings in dollars they will see in purchasing specific products. And finally, at the end of the circle, unconcerned. Price is their #1 deciding factor. What's important to see in this slide is that if you can convince the Lohas of the value of your products, because they're such strong advocates, you can easily sway over 55% of the population. The Prius is a perfect example of a campaign to persuade the Lohas that won over the majority of inflation. Toyota started off by promoting themselves to strong Lohas, a campaign by famous celebrities known for their environmental social behaviors. People like Al Gore, Matt Damon, George Clooney, all promoted the Prius and what they loved about it. This eventually sold the Naturalites and captured some drifters to where today the Prius is a mainstream car and has had one of the fastest sales trajectories in the history of the automobile. Now in the second leg of the campaign, instead of just hearing about how good the Priuses are for the environment, you're now hearing arguments for cost savings as the campaign reaches into the depths of the drifters and conventional buyers. While the chart here shows North American statistics, it is important to note that when studies on this consumer pattern have taken place globally, we see minimal change in percentage, 1 or 2% between each position and depending on the country, which suggests that indeed the Lohas is a force to be reckoned with. In this slide from Lander's annual Green Brand Survey, what we see is when asked, consumers across the whole spectrum, Lohas's to unconventionals, refer to the package as their primary source for assessing sustainability value of a product. Ads and sustainability reports have had much less impact than was previously thought. Of course, I'm sure it comes as no surprise to those on the call that packaging has enormous ability to influence product perception. Another slide from EcoFocus in 2011 enforces the idea that sustainable packaging can influence the consumer's choices. But what we see here is, even though I suggested previously that we needed to move away from values and perception of what is sustainable towards a more holistic quantitative approach like we saw in the SPC definition of sustainable packaging, consumers are not there yet. Use of recycled material, recyclability, followed by compostability, are high influencers in defining the sustainability value of a product to most consumers. Another growing trend we're seeing is the rise of extended producer responsibility. Remember earlier in the slide I said the EU had 10 years before they're expected to run out of landfill space? Well, if I can digress, let me tell you a story. About a decade ago, the German government decided they needed to do something to address the pending landfill shortage, and they decided they would start charging citizens a set fee for every bag of garbage they produced, hoping that the economic cost would incentivize consumers to produce less waste. What happened, though, is that as consumers finished paying at the cash register, they would tear open their packages, drop them at the retailers, and say, "We never wanted this packaging in the first place. You can pay for its disposal." This gave rise to what we now refer to as extended producer responsibility, or also called product stewardship. The concept that those who produce waste should be responsible for managing the cost of the waste. The Green Dot program, started in Germany in response to this campaign, has a perfect example of an early EPR program that has since grown across the European Union. Closer to home, we see EPR for packaging in Canada. Recently, the Canadian Council of Ministers for the Environment agreed to institute an EPR program for packaging across all Canadian provinces and territories by 2015. Ontario was the first province to institute their program. If you are a brand owner, you need to report to the Ontario government how many tons of packaging you put on retail shelves in that province. You are then assessed a fee based on weight. Those fees help cover the cost of household recycling programs available in all municipalities across the province. While this concept may take a few of you by surprise, I should note that we already have extended producer responsibility programs here in the U.S. This map shows many of the programs in the states which have enacted them that are current today. You may be more familiar with paint or electronic take-back programs, or even simple things like recycling inkjets when you walk into Staples, or light bulbs at Home Depot. These are all versions of EPR programs. What's important to note, however, is that the United States is the only developed nation across the globe that does not currently have an EPR model for packaging waste. The pressure to create something is mounting. Currently, 9 states have legislation on the books for EPR for packaging. None of them passed yet. A lot more proposed programs in 2011, but they failed to pass. Saying that, this is an economic imperative for many states and municipalities. Especially as we come out of the recession, governments are looking at ways to cut costs and increase revenues in order to help defray the cost of municipal waste collection and recycling. EPR programs, which require the producer to help cover some or all the costs, are incredibly appealing. What I want to leave you with today is that the debate on EPR for packaging has moved away from fighting it towards helping define it. A lot of industry groups are now accepting EPR for packaging will become a reality. You're going to want to focus attention to harmonizing programs across the nation versus addressing different programs on a state-by-state, or even worse, on a municipal level. This slide just shows a quick snapshot of some of the various industry associations currently engaged in helping define the discussion. Anticipate interest in this will grow. Already the AF&PA and PPC are monitoring this actively, looking at ways that they too may engage. Another trend we're seeing on the brand owner side is the rise of packaging protocols. Brand owners are starting to articulate what they value as sustainable packaging and what expectations they have on their vendors. In some cases, they've implemented an extensive RFP process to evaluate sustainability. In others, they have a simple policy statement of what they expect to see from increasing their sphere of influence to see how their partners can help them tackle some of the tougher projects. This is an example of the Procter & Gamble scorecard that came out 2 years ago. With this scorecard, Procter & Gamble's expectation is that vendors will respond annually and demonstrate continuous improvement. Failure to show progress and reductions year after year will lead to reconsideration of the supplier relationship. Please note that the focus is on sustainability in the manufacturing process. Those elements specifically related to package design are under optional measures. It should also be noted that P&G has made the scorecard publicly available and is encouraging other companies to adopt their model. I'm currently aware of 2 other companies that are using versions of this. One scorecard you are probably a little bit more familiar with is the Walmart scorecard, which received enormous media attention and shook up the industry a few years back when they announced their intentions. Just to reinforce the process, I'd like to re-articulate their intention. We often reference the Walmart scorecard, but in actuality, it's a 3-stage process. To begin with, Walmart actually has 2 scorecards. The first is a brand owner scorecard to assess the overall sustainability performance of the brand owners. Like we saw in the P&G scorecard, they want to know if your company is committed to sustainability in the first place before they evaluate if they want to do business with you. Then they also have a package scorecard, which assesses the sustainability value of the packaging. Secondly, Walmart has established something called the Sustainability Consortium. Led by Arizona State University and the University of Arkansas, the Sustainability Consortium is actually a conglomerate of academics, NGOs, and over 75 global companies. Companies like Target, Intel, Hewlett-Packard, and Diageo Foods. Their objective is to create tools and resources to help define and articulate sustainability of global products. One of the ways they're seeking to do so is to create the world's largest database of life cycle value assessments. Remember the water bottle example I gave earlier? Finally, once Walmart has evaluated the sustainability of your company and decided they want your product on your shelves, they want to empower the consumer to make a choice. Similar to a nutrition label, Walmart plans to create a sustainability label so you can decide between products which best reflect your sustainability values. So for example, I could go pick up 2 cotton t-shirts at Walmart and evaluate which one uses more water in the manufacturing process or which one is using child labor before I decide to buy. So the ultimate goal is Walmart will do an initial screening, but then they want to see the consumer empowered to make the final choice. Think of the LOHAS. This is an incredible value add for them. The sustainability label is articulating the information the LOHAS wants to make a decision. It's important to note here that while Walmart is taking the lead in developing all this, they do not want this to be proprietary. In fact, with 75 global companies, including competitors in the Sustainability Consortium, Walmart is encouraging anyone who wants to contribute to do so and to use the tools in their own process. So let's drill down a little further into the Walmart process. This slide shows the breakdown of the Walmart scorecard for brand owners. It's 15 questions broken down into 4 sections. Again, think back to the stool I showed at the beginning of the presentation, and you'll see many of the similar concepts of people, planet, and profit within. In red, what I've done is highlighted the 3 areas where you could stand to get the highest score if you were to answer the scorecard directly. Remember though, this is for the brand owner as the first screen to assess their responsibility, and is therefore more focused on their internal manufacturing processes. The highest points come from addressing greenhouse gas emissions. 2 questions worth 24% of the score. Do you know what your carbon footprint is? And do you have targets for reducing them? Second largest is social compliance. How are you treating your employees? And are you following the rules and regulations? And finally, the third highest score comes from packaging and how sustainable it is. In fact, Walmart has created a second scorecard to address packaging specifically. This packaging scorecard is in actuality what most of our industry refers to when they reference the Walmart scorecard. Within the packaging scorecard, we see elements of the SPC definition we saw earlier. For the most part, each section looks at a different stage in the package's life. Walmart wants to know how many tons of carbon emissions per ton of packaging you produce. What's the material value? In other words, if they look at the paperboard you're using, what's its life cycle value assessment score? Is virgin or recycled better? They want to know how you lightweighted and or right-sized your package, and are you shipping it in the most efficient manner? They also want to look at transportation. Are you buying board from Chile when you could buy it locally? Or if you're packaging product in New York, why are you buying your packaging from a California-based buyer and not someone more local to New York? Recovery value looks at recyclability, compostability, or landfilling of a product. And use of renewable energy is asking about your process on the manufacturing floor and how you're addressing resource consumption. Finally, innovation provides an opportunity to promote new concepts and ideas you may have developed, and also offers an opportunity for quick score for using additional tools like forester certification in your packaging. Using the data pulled from the Sustainability Consortium, Walmart asks you simple questions and then articulates from that life cycle value data to provide a final score. Your score is then bell-curved against your peers, providing you with a final Walmart ranking. For example, if you are providing information for a milk jug, all other competitors' milk jugs would be curved against yours. Similar to Procter & Gamble, Walmart's expectation is continuous improvement. And while you may start off with high score, as your competitors improve their performance, your score will drop unless you continue to innovate. So while we've covered the gamut of the Walmart scorecard and their ultimate goal, I do want to emphasize that Walmart was not the first, nor will they be the last, to promote the idea of the sustainability label. In fact, we're already seeing them out in the consumer marketplace. Patagonia was the first to release a sustainability label. Based on their own internal assessments, they started providing labels on all their shoe products a few years ago. The outdoor apparel industry liked what they were doing, and with Patagonia's support, expanded the concept to become an industry-wide initiative. Members of their consortium worked to refine the original model and have access to use it on their own products, as we're now seeing with this Timberland example. We're also seeing various similar ideas for sustainability label come up in other industries. A popular version in the EU is the Carbon Trust label, started by a nonprofit. Companies work with the Carbon Trust to assess the carbon footprint of their product and then either tell its whole footprint or, in the case of the example we see here, share any successes in reduction of their carbon footprint that they've recently had. We also see similar type labels popping up in the construction industry to help consumers understand why a building has superior environmental performance, or in this case, even the coffee industry. In fact, rumor has it that the country of France has expressed interest in having a sustainability label on all consumer products by 2015. Along the lines of quantifying data, we're also seeing more and more tools to help buyers assess the sustainability of different products. Shown on this slide is the Environmental Defense Fund's paper calculator, a free tool that permits buyers to assess sustainability value of different paperboard grades. Again, based on life cycle assessments, this slide suggests that recycled board would perform better from an environmental standpoint than solid bleach sulfate in 7 different environmental criteria. Metaphor, a project recently purchased by Green Blue, the head nonprofit under which the Sustainable Packaging Coalition operates, has taken this concept one step further by assessing not only the board, but also the mill to assess their own manufacturing process. The Metaphor calculator is currently by subscription, both for the mills who want to be profiled and consumers who want to use it. So it's currently a little bit more limited. But it points to a growing trend. Not only does the product need to be sustainable, but so does the company. The paper calculators are a form of supplier assessments that help buyers decide between vendors. What we're seeing now is that as companies tackle their own sustainability goals, they are finding some of the greatest risks and impacts are downstream within the supply chain. And so they're focusing more and more attention on their vendors in order to increase their overall sustainability. For example, Walmart has stated a goal of reducing their carbon footprint by 20 million metric tons. But if you added up all the carbon emissions from each of their North American stores, it comes to less than 20 million metric tons. So by definition, their success requires they push this down to their supply chain to reduce emissions amongst their vendors. While many companies have their own supply chain audits, some of the larger firms are starting to collaborate to create a common tool called SEDEX. By establishing a common tool, it's anticipated it will reduce reporting requirements and provide a consistent means of assessing between vendors. SEDEX was originally launched in the UK, and currently you'll find more European and global firms are members than North American per se. Involvement in SEDEX is membership again, both by the brand owners who want to use it as an assessment tool and by the vendors who are responding, although fees are minimal and permission must be granted to access results. With over 60 questions in the survey, this is just a quick snapshot of some of the questions asked. Again, thinking back to the stool we showed at the beginning, the questions address the triple bottom line philosophy: people, planet, and profits. Following this trend of standardizing assessments, the Global Packaging Project, or GPPS, is another similar initiative started by the Consumer Goods Forum to help brand owners assess the sustainability of packaging. Rather than having vendors provide value statements to attest to sustainability, the Consumer Goods Forum wanted a tool against which they could assess all packaging on an apples-to-apples basis. The GPPS has over 70 metrics covering the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit. Only on this screen do we see the planet aspect. The idea is providing a set of questions and expected units of measurement for responding. Companies can then pull together information which can then be shared amongst their customers. Additionally, brand owners can pick and choose from these metrics which ones are more important to them, and know that when they ask vendor B or vendor C for an answer, that they will respond in a uniform manner, making the evaluation process much more simple and concise. Since it's been released, Walmart has announced their intention to amend their packaging scorecard in the next few months to align closer to the GPPS metrics, and we're seeing more and more companies use or reference it. CDEX and GPPS suggest we're moving towards standardization and sustainability and seeking to find ways to quantify sustainability statements. One example where we have disparity and where global standards would help is in defining post-consumer content. The Canadian definition of post-consumer content includes scrap waste from the manufacturing floor. In the U.S., post-consumer waste is only waste that has served its intended purpose. For example, magazines must have been in place for retail sale and therefore have to have left the manufacturing floor and gone out into the marketplace in order to be qualified as consumer waste. By standardizing this definition, we would help North American brand owners who are looking for high post-consumer content in their board truly assess the claims made between Canadian mills and American mills. While this example is yet to be standardized between the two countries, what we're seeing is more of a movement towards this type of standardization with other industries. The International Safe Transit Authority, ISTA, for example, identified that the trends towards lightweighting packaging was actually causing package damage during the shipping process, and recently came out with recommended guidelines to help balance lightweighting with shipping efficiency. And ISO is currently defining sustainable packaging and creating common metrics to help support claims. Well, pardon me. So to wrap all this up, I want to provide a quick snapshot of some of the tools you can use or look for when helping design sustainable packaging. Forestry certifications are logos that advise the consumer that all the way down the supply chain back to the actual forest, best environmental and social practices have been implemented. Considering forestry certifications are some of the most globally recognized eco-logos, the use of them on your package is a quick way to communicate to consumers this process. Post-consumer content is currently considered the best grade of recycled waste, and more vendors are seeking higher post-consumer content to demonstrate their commitment to sustainability. Additionally, working with designers to ensure that you've lightweighted and right-sized the package is a quick and easy fix. Also, don't forget to look at the coatings, inks, and glues to ensure there's no chemicals of concern and ability for recycling. Additionally, package modeling software can help assess between designs to decide which package is the better performer from a sustainability standpoint. Two popular systems are Compass, developed by the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, and the Walmart Packaging Scorecard system, which although does not provide a direct score to what you would receive if you sold directly to Walmart, does provide a guideline of the preferred choice between designs. And finally, don't forget to look at your own internal processes. What is your company doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, decrease energy consumption, or reduce landfill waste? And how are you communicating this to your customers? So that brings us to the end of today's presentation. If there's one message I'd like to leave you with today, it's that we're seeing a trend towards quantifying and standardizing sustainability claims. And in doing so, we need to look at the whole picture, the life cycle of our processes, not just offering a few value statement claims. And on that note, I will open up the room to any questions, or alternatively, feel free to contact me or your Paperworks sales representative directly. And on behalf of Paperworks Industries, thank you for your time today.